Kingsman: The Golden Circle is the sequel to Kingsman: The Secret Service, which came out 2015. It was directed by Matthew Vaughn and stars Taaron Egerton. Or is it Taaron Egerton? I'm not entirely too sure. The film takes place around roughly a year after the first movie ended. Eggsy is now an official member of the Kingsman, and he has fulfilled his potential, and he now knows how to be a gentleman, while also being really good at fighting. In short, he's learned a lot since the first movie. However, a new threat arises as a sinister corporation known as the Golden Circle takes the entire world as hostage. And so the Kingsmen have to team up with another spy group known as the Statesmen, and they have to work together as a team to bring down the Golden Circle and save the world. Out of anticipation for this movie, I already reviewed Kingsman: The Secret Service just a couple of days ago, but for those who haven't seen that review, the first Kingsman, I loved. It definitely caught me by surprise. It was so much better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was a fantastic action spy film, and it's one of my favourite films to come out of 2015. And overall, I just thought it was an incredibly fun movie. So when I heard they were making another one, I naturally got excited. And then, just a few days prior to seeing the movie, I saw the 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. And then just a day before seeing the movie, Chris Tuckman uploaded his review stating that he found the film disappointing. But at that point, I had already decided that I was going to see the movie anyway, so I decided to see it anyway, and I just shrugged it off, and I was still just as excited for the movie as I already was. I was just rather nervous about it because apparently it wasn't that good. But I just shrugged it off and I remained excited for it. Plus, I just don't trust Rotten Tomatoes anymore. Like, at all. I didn't go into the movie with my expectations ridiculously high. I just went into the movie not expecting it to be as good as the original, but I expected it to have the same spirit as the original, and overall just expected a fun action movie with crazy over-the-top action sequences, and overall just a film that kept the same fun, lighthearted tone as the original. And I got exactly what I expected. And this movie did not disappoint me. Kingsman: The Golden Circle was exactly what I wanted out of a sequel to Kingsman: The Secret Service. Now, no, I personally didn't think that this movie was quite as good as the first one, but honestly, it didn't have to be. The first thing I loved about this movie is the fact it certainly keeps to the same spirit and heart as the original. It's a very lighthearted, fun movie, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's very similar to the first one in terms of tone. Just from the very first scene, I knew I was going to love this movie. The action we got in this movie is just like the action we got in the first one. It's loud, it's over the top, it's bloody, and it's incredibly fun. There's a lot of explosions and the utilization of a lot of really cool high-tech gadgets. However, one thing the action does in this movie that wasn't really quite done as much in the first one is the fact that some of the action sequences in this movie are extremely creative. I really love how the action in this movie really broke out of the mold of the typical car chase or anything you might see in some other generic action film. And it's just a shame to know that literally every single action sequence in this movie, except for the very last one, in one way, shape or form, has been showcased in the trailers. But that really isn't a problem with the movie, but more just a problem with the marketing. But I love it when an action movie gets very creative with their action sequences. That is the reason why I love movies like Mission Impossible. But even the stuff that we got in between the action sequences were incredibly fun. This movie is insanely entertaining, and it is just as much fun to watch as the first one. And that includes the comedy. This is actually a pretty funny movie. In fact, I actually would argue that this movie was even funnier than the original. Especially when it comes to the utilization of a certain celebrity that I had no idea was in this movie, but he was definitely responsible for a very good portion of the laughs that I got out of this movie. I had no idea he was going to be in it. He totally caught me off guard, but he was hilarious. I was also highly invested in the film's story. For example, I wanted to know more about what the Golden Circle was. And there is another subplot in this movie that I don't want to go into much detail for spoiler reasons, but this other subplot really got to me at a deeper level, to the point where that subplot even got me rather emotional at times. And a lot of it really just comes down to little moments between characters, which leads to, well, the characters. They're great. Admittedly, there are a couple of characters I do wish we got to know a little bit more, but the ones we do focus on, I really enjoyed. Each of the characters I found really compelling, they bounce off each other incredibly well, and all of the actors give really good performances. And Eggsy has seriously improved as a character. The Eggsy we see from the beginning of the first Kingsman is completely gone. He is now a proper gentleman, but he's also incredibly skilled and knows how to bring somebody down. He's just incredibly likable, and I think a lot of it really comes down to Taaron Egerton's performance. Or Taaron Egerton. I really should look up the pronunciation for his name. I love how he hasn't forgotten anything that he learned in the first movie. Everything he learned in the first movie, he still remembers to this day, and he utilizes it to help progress the plot. However, this is not a perfect movie, and there are some minor issues I did have with the film. My biggest issue with the movie is the fact that the villain is really lackluster. She does some pretty despicable stuff in this movie, and the stakes are about as high as the first movie, but I just never found her that intimidating. She was just kind of there, and her motivation I found really weak. She almost kind of felt like a cartoon character in a way. She just had no dominating presence over me, and there never really felt like there was a sense of urgency against her character. And I just never felt threatened by her. Fortunately, she doesn't have a lisp, so I didn't find her quite as annoying as Samuel L. Jackson's character. But at the same time, I do think that in every other aspect, Samuel L. Jackson's character was a superior villain, because he had a better motivation, and overall, I just found him to be a more compelling character. Also, this movie has a lot of subplots. Although, to be fair, I do feel like that they were juggled pretty well. The transition between subplots was pretty well edited, and I agreed when they cut from one scene to another, and I do feel like that the subplots were juggled as well as it could have been, but it doesn't help the fact that the film did feel rather crowded. It felt like there was a lot of stuff in it. And what also added to this is the fact that the film is pretty long. The movie is about 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and it certainly felt like that. But overall, I had a blast with this movie, and it was insanely fun to watch. I severely disagree with what the critics are saying about this movie. I personally loved it. I definitely would recommend this movie to anyone who liked the first one. In fact, I would recommend it to anyone who just likes action films in general. If you really liked the first Kingsman and you just want more of that, only with a different story, then definitely go and see this movie, because you'll probably have a ton of fun with it. I do not regret seeing this movie in cinemas. I'm going to give Kingsman the Golden Circle an A. I loved this movie. In my opinion, it's by far the most underrated film I've seen so far this year. Well, at least one of them. I don't exactly get why the critics didn't like it, but I personally thought this movie was awesome. Definitely go see this one. It was certainly worth my time and money. And if they decide to make a third one, you can bet that I will definitely be seeing it in cinemas. But having that said, thank you all for watching. Stay tuned till my next video, whatever it may be. But until then, yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers!